So my shop air compressor is up in the attic of the shop. I've talked about this in a couple of different videos, and it's super convenient. I've got a hose line coming down to a hose reel. Super convenient, keeps the air compressor usable but out of the way. But one of the things that I've noticed is that I tend to keep the compressor on almost all the time. And when I originally designed the system to control the compressor remotely using Alexa, and I've also got some manual switches down here, because obviously I don't want to have to go up in the attic every single time I want to turn the compressor on and off. But the way I imagined using it was that if I left the shop, I would just turn the compressor off, tell Echo, turn the compressor off, and then come back in the shop and Echo, turn the compressor on. But I found that it's just, again, easier or more convenient to just leave the compressor on. That way, whenever I'm in here, I've got compressed air, which I use quite a bit, enough to justify just leaving the compressor on. But the problem with that is that the tank is constantly under pressure, and as you use it and it compresses and it fills the tank back up and everything, moisture can build up inside of the tank, which isn't good. That's why you want to drain your compressor tank every once in a while. The automatic valve that I have on there now basically just opens and closes based on whether or not you've turned the compressor off or turned the compressor on. So when it's on, the valve is obviously closed, the compressor is on, the valve is closed. But when you turn it off, that valve is energized and it powers up and it opens to allow the tank to drain. And then after a certain period of time, the valve is de-energized and there's a capacitor in it that gives it enough power to then close, so that way the next time you come in and you turn the compressor on, that drain valve is closed and the tank will fill. I got this valve a while ago, and I just haven't had the desire to really tackle this project. Not that it's super complicated, but this is probably, I knew these valves existed and I considered both this valve and the valve that's up there, and I probably should have gone with actually both, which is what I'm doing now. But what this valve is it's a timer-based valve, so you can set it between anywhere from half a minute to 45 minutes. It will turn on and it will open for anywhere from half a second to 10 seconds. Using these dials here, you can say every 30 minutes, open for 2 seconds, or half a second, or 6 seconds. And these are designed to basically solve that problem of the sort of the always-on compressor, which is that, you know, this will, every 45 minutes, will come on for 2 seconds and just bleed off enough air and moisture to just keep the moisture at bay. So you're not building moisture up in the tank, you're not getting air in your lines or anything like that. So I'm actually going to install this in parallel with the existing valve. That way, when I do turn the compressor off, if I'm going to be gone for a few days and I'm not going to need the compressor for a while, and I do turn it off, then that way that valve will still drain the tank, but then whenever the compressor is on, I'll just plug this into the same outlet that's up there that is controlled, or that controls the on and off state of the compressor. So whenever the compressor is on, this valve will be on, and whatever I set these settings to, it'll just come on periodically to bleed off the moisture. But the other problem I want to try to solve is, and this is mostly what this video is about, is that one of the more annoying things that the compressor does is it creates quite a lot of vibration. And I have the compressor sitting on some cork and rubber isolation pads, but they don't seem to do quite enough to isolate the compressor. And so it's not so much the compressor noise that is annoying when I'm down here in the shop and it kicks on. It's the vibration that it causes, because it's, you know, right above my head, especially if I'm standing in that corner of the shop. It's right above my head. First off, I think those isolation pads are probably too stiff. I don't think they're squishy enough to be super effective. So what I want to do is I want to see if I can create basically an isolation platform that I can just set the compressor on. Now, I don't have a whole lot of room to be able to move the compressor up, so I can't make it a super tall platform or anything. But I originally thought, and I just ordered these, this rubber rod and these rubber balls from McMaster-Carr, and I originally thought I could cut this into 4 or 5 sections, you know, one for each corner and maybe one for the center, and have a platform that would, you know, that would be, you know, the 4 or 5 sections would be sitting there, and then this would be sitting on top, and the compressor would go on top of this, and that would sort of create an isolation platform. This is a lot stiffer than I thought it was. I thought it was going to be softer. I mean, it can't be, it's sort of it can't be too stiff and it can't be too soft, because it does still have to hold up the weight of the compressor, which isn't, I mean, the compressor is maybe 75 pounds. So I don't know if I'm going to use this, but I also got these rubber balls because I kind of had this idea that I could come up with a way to sort of hold those balls in place and then have this sitting here. And for some reason, I don't know why, but that idea appealed to me more than the rods. I thought about maybe 3D printing sort of like a cup that these could sit in on either end, and then that would be the isolation thing. These larger ones, which are the same diameter as the rod, it's 2 inches, are a little, again, stiffer than I would think would be effective, but these smaller ones are almost, I think, just right. They are fairly small though, which is actually a good thing, because again, I don't have a lot of space to work with. So I think what I may do is actually start with the small ones and see what kind of results I get, and if I'm happy with it, then I'll probably just stop there, because this isn't something that I want to invest a whole lot of time or energy into. But if they don't work, then I should be able to modify whatever I've done and switch to either the bigger rubber balls or the rubber rod, because it'll be easier to make, if I, you know, sort of drill in a divot for these to sit in, it'll be easier to make that bigger than it would be to make it smaller. So it'd be something kind of, if I can manage to do this without dumping these everywhere. Let me just eliminate that 5th one, but it would look something not like that. But anyway, you get the idea. But it would just be a platform, and those rubber balls would be sitting there. And I think between the 5, if I did 5, so four in the corners and 1 in the middle, I think these smaller ones would still be plenty to hold up the tank. I thought about like suspending it from springs and stuff. Anyway, one idea that I really thought would be interesting is if you got some neodymium magnets and you put them so that the opposing sides were facing each other between the 2 platforms, and so the compressor is mounted here. So basically you have this magnetic cushion. The only problem with that is you'd have to find the right sized and power of magnet to be able to balance the weight of the compressor between that magnetic force, the repelling force of the magnets. And you'd also have to attach some chain or strings or whatever, because if you've got it perfectly balanced and the compressor kicks on and there's nothing to keep this part from going off into wherever, so you'd have to have something to just make it so that as it was moving around. But that would potentially could be a way to completely decouple the compressor from the shop itself. Other than having some fairly loose, it would have to be, you'd want it to be fairly loose, either chain or string, like in each corner, so it would, if it moved around, then it would be limited in how it would move. But again, this isn't something I want to invest a whole lot of time or energy to. So as neat as that would be, I think it would be a very time-consuming way of doing it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try these smaller ones, put the new valve in place, and we'll go from there. All right, so we are up here in the attic, and you can see the isolation pads. I have the compressor on now. Again, those bolts aren't tightened super tight. You can see that the compressor can still, maybe you can see, I don't know. But you can see the compressor can still move around. And maybe they should be tightened down. Maybe having these bolted down all the way would help. I don't know. But again, I've heard that you don't want the compressor rigidly tightened down. There's the automatic drain valve that just goes outside that I have now. So again, I'll be taking that off and putting the other one in parallel so they both work. So you can see that I don't have a lot of room before I start running into the truss of the attic. So I can't make the platform super tall. Okay, you'll have to forgive me. I'm filming this on my phone just because it's faster and easier, but just a quick update. So I got the valve off. So I think what I can do, because again, I want these valves to operate in parallel. So that way, this valve can do what it needs to do. This valve can do what it needs to do. But if both of them are closed, no air is coming out. If one of them is open, it drains, that sort of thing. So what I think I could do, this is the little bib coming off the bottom of the tank. So if I tee off here into these two, then it hits the valve. And if I come back and re-tee into the outlets of each, and then come back out here, I can use the existing pipe, the existing hole, I think. The upshot of all this is that I need to make a run to Home Depot to get some fittings, because I don't have the fittings for this. All right, so I've got the timed valve installed with the drain valve, and so right now I have it set for every 2 seconds, or every 45 minutes it'll open for 2 seconds. So that'll be something like this. There's a test button here. So that's what I'll do. Now the setup is a little bit janky just because it's temporary, because I found that the drain valve here has a leak. This is a ball valve, and so there's a leak that's actually going through the ball valve itself. I don't know if there's some debris or something in there, or if the seals have just worn out. There's some plastic, probably like a nylon or something, seal on each end of the ball, and those may have just worn out. I don't know. I'm going to check to see if it's still under warranty or just get a replacement. For the time being, I put this, it's the only thing I had, but I put this valve on there. In fact, you may be able to hear it if I open the valve. Yeah, see? So there's a little bit of an air leak, which actually makes sense because I have been noticing that the compressor is kicked on more often than it used to. So that may have actually been the source of my leak. I hadn't checked it out up until this point. So got a cap on there right now. And then I was intending to tee off and the both of those valves and then run one tube of this plastic tube. Just went with this plastic tube because this is not on this side of these valves. You know, having anything super robust isn't really that big of a deal. It's the drain, and the fittings are frankly cheaper than the brass fittings or the galvanized fittings. I use galvanized right here, again, just because of cost. But right now I've just got the tube just sort of hanging or going through the galvanized pipe here. At some point I'll probably attach this. I have it going through the galvanized pipe because it keeps it from being a whip when that valve does trigger. So right now I'm going to move on to working on the vibration issue, see if I can reduce that. Now, I noticed, right now it's not bolted down or anything, but I noticed that when this was running, because I had to unbolt it in order to get the valving and stuff on and off, because I had to tilt the tank. But I noticed that when it was running, it wasn't wanting to walk off anywhere. And so I think I might have been mistaken in having these bolts, even though they weren't tight down. It may be better just to have the compressor sitting on these pads and then maybe put a strap around it, not super tight or anything, but just to put a strap around it, tie it down to the wall or something, just to keep it, just in case it wants to start walking around. But I think using one of these balls, and I think I came up with a faster and easier, sort of more down and dirty way of using these potentially. But first I want to sort of quantify any change. I don't need to be super scientific about it, but I want to know beyond just what I may be perceiving downstairs in terms of the vibration, if there's any change. So I've got an app on my phone that uses the accelerometer in the phone to measure vibration. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bolt this back down as much or as close to how it was before, and I'm going to make a measurement. I'm going to turn the compressor on, make a measurement, and then I'm going to take the bolts out and make a measurement with it just sitting on the pads. And then I think what I'm going to do is, I realized that one of the ways I could do this without having to go through the process of building any sort of weird platform is I could just set the compressor on these balls. There's the holes that because this used to be on wheels and stuff, and it may just sit in there, and the rubber may just be grippy enough and the compressor heavy enough that it may just stay there without having to go through any platform building or anything like that. So that might be a way to do it, assuming that the balls are any better than the pads, these isolation pads. All right, so I've got the compressor bolted down as close as I think I can get it to how it was before. So I've got the app ready to go to measure the vibration. I'm just going to do this all up here just because it'll be faster and easier than running up and down stairs. And I'll use try to use the app, the data from the app, as a way to sort of quantify if there's any meaningful change. So I need to drain the tank so it'll run, and then I can start the testing. All right, so I've got the phone ready to sample, and I'm gonna start that. There's gonna be a 10-second delay, but once it goes, I see it going, then I'm gonna turn the compressor on. All right, so I'm gonna save that. Okay, so that's saved. So I'm gonna unbolt the feet. I'm gonna start the next sample. So that actually, based on just what I'm remembering from the other graph, does look different. Most of the motion is in the z-axis. So that does look different. I don't know if it's better or anything. I'll have to look at them side by side to see if I can tell the difference. But now I think I'll try, just because I'm most interested, I think I'll try the small feet first. Okay, so I can already tell that the issue that these the smaller rubber balls are going to have is the compressor, really. But that can actually work in our favor in terms of reducing the amount of vibration that transfers to the floor, because if it's doing that, that might actually work out better. It's very squishy. So I'm going to start the next sample and turn the compressor on. That's amazing. That's simply amazing. I did not expect that. I honestly did not expect that to work so well. On the graph, that almost didn't register at all compared to the other ones. And just feeling the floor, significantly better. Wow.
That is cool. And it didn't seem like it was wanting to move around a whole lot. So I honestly think this would work. I don't know if I want to, if it's necessary to try these, because these are almost the same hardness. I think it's durometer, I think is how you, as these. It's like, leave well enough alone, right? That is significant. I will put the graphs on the screen so you can see. Okay, so I'm calling it. I'm gonna just go with the small rubber balls. The big ones are just too difficult to try to get in place. The small ones fit inside the existing holes as sort of it captures them, and whereas the big ones are too big to do that. And then these are so much squishier that they squish down, and then they want to actually stay in place easier. Trying to get the compressor on these and to get it to stay in place, well, it's like trying to get it on balls and trying to keep it in place. It just wants to roll around. So, and plus, again, based on the hardness of compared to the pad, I think that you get the same result. I can't say for sure. I mean, that is a fair bit thicker, but for the purposes of this, the change between these and the small ones is so much that it's just, I don't think that there's any need to go any further with it. Okay, so I think you can see how they're just sitting on there, and they're sort of resting inside the existing hole. And these are squishy enough, they're actually compressed quite a bit, that once they're on there, then they move around, but they're not like, the tank doesn't seem to want to walk away. I'm going to keep an eye on it. Worst case, I can put a strap around it to sort of just keep it tied to the wall so it doesn't go wandering off down the street. But so I'm going to turn the compressor on and go downstairs and see if I can tell any difference. I'm back down here in the shop, and I am shocked. If you had told me beforehand that this was going to be the difference, that it would matter this much, just putting the compressor on some tiny little rubber balls I just kicked off, I wouldn't have believed you. I mean, it shows in the graphs. How much vibration was being transferred to the building, to the floor, and then to the building, even through those isolation pads. I mean, it's shocking. I mean, even unbolted, with the pads unbolted, it was still transferring a significant amount of vibration to the floor. It is orders of magnitude difference just in the perception. And then based on the graphs, significant difference between the rubber balls and either variation of the isolation pads. I was going to build a whole like platform and thing to mount it on, but then I thought, you know, if I just set the compressor on the little rubber balls themselves, maybe that's enough. Now, I'm going to keep an eye on it to make sure that the compressor doesn't start trying to like walk away. If it does, then all I need to do is just get like a strap or something, and not like strap it firmly to the wall, but just have something there for it to bump up against if it tries to walk away. I am very pleased with that result. So anyway, that's it. Simple project. If you have an air compressor and it vibrates too much, put it on some rubber balls.